Today is a special day in the church here. On this date, the church celebrates the solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul. The church holds these two figures in such high esteem that when their day falls on a Sunday, it replaces the usual Sunday readings and prayers. And it is interesting to note that this is a very ancient feast. It dates back to the year 250 AD. The two are honored because of all the apostles. These two we know most about. They were the greatest influence in the church in its beginnings, and it reminds us of the kind of persons on whom Jesus built his church. It is good and important for Christians in any age to be reminded that these founding pillars of the church were so terribly human and frail. But it is even better to be reminded of how through cooperation with God's grace, they came through to a worthy and heroic end, that of martyrdom. Look at Peter. After all his protestations of loyalty, "Lord, I will never deny you," he denied 3 times that he even knew Jesus. After the resurrection, when Jesus appears to the apostles at the Sea of Tiberias, he asked Peter 3 times, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Jesus is not trying to rub in after Peter's threefold denial the evening of Jesus' arrest and trial. That's not his way. But he undoubtedly does want to give Peter a chance to make up for his cowardly failure to stand up and defend the Master. More than all else, Jesus wants to solidify the promise he made in the neighborhood of Caesarea Philippi to make Peter the rock foundation of his church. When Jesus says to Peter, "Feed my lambs, feed my sheep," he is surely not talking about animals. He is referring to Peter's future position in his church. I am sure that Jesus loved and enjoyed Peter very much. And then there is Paul. What would Christianity have been like without him? Paul is perhaps history's best example of human response to divine grace and its power. In the second reading, Paul reviews his entire life, beginning with his pre-conversion hatred and persecution of Christians, and ending with his imprisonment shortly before his martyrdom. He states, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." He gives all credit to Jesus. Again, he states, "The Lord stood by my side and gave me strength, so that through me the preaching task might be completed, and all the nations might hear the gospel." It was for love of Jesus that drove him to spend himself without any holding back in spreading the knowledge and love of Jesus. It was for love of Jesus that buoyed him up to shed his blood for the faith. It was for love of Jesus that drove him to share Christ and his good news with all future generations of Christians by writing his letters. This is one of the most important and necessary feasts of the entire church year. It surely brings out the humanness of the founding pillars of the church, and we always need to remember that they were human and not angels. They were as frail and as capable of sinning as we are. And knowing this must be a source of much consolation and encouragement to us. We know enough about Peter and Paul to realize that if God could work in them and bring them to the fullness of their being, God can do the same in us if we only choose to give in to his grace. It is terribly important to realize that the work of becoming a whole person, a saint, is the work of a lifetime of receiving Jesus into our lives and allowing him full power over our hearts. Christ was everything for Peter. He was everything for Paul. He must become everything for us. It was only after his personal failures, his denials of Christ, that Peter was able to cry out, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Peter has shown us the way. We too are human. We have sinned as he did. God grant that the hour will come soon when we can make Peter's words our very own as we cry out, "Lord, you know everything. You know well that I love you." Let us profess our faith.